do a quick playthrough here. Hopefully all the audio is recording properly. The last couple of times I've tried to stream, things were really wonky. Currently running through with a purifier build. Have not filed taxes yet this year, but I've been hearing from a lot of my friends who have that despite maintaining the same income over the last year and the year prior, that their taxes have gone up to roughly a $500 to $800 additional payout. As in, they're having to pay out extra into their taxes. Basically, no refund. Which is going to suck for me, considering the fact that I don't really have much expendable income to be tossing around. know quite a few people in my area are about a $500 disaster away from going full Jesse James on the whole system. I've said it before and I'll say it again. The IRS's slogan should be, "We have what it takes to take what you have." With the runner-up slogan being, "IRS, no one will ever fuck you harder." So yeah, I'm basically multi-classed into Demolitionist from Inquisitor, and I'm focusing on dealing a lot of rapid ranged damage. I've beaten this twice with melee builds. One focused on dual wielding and the other focused on sword and board. But that's when the game first released, and they've added a ton of additional content since then. Yeah, the great thing about the ranged builds on here is that they actually deal quite a bit of damage compared to other ARPGs that I've played, while being able to maintain high defense. So you can pretty much play Grim Dawn any way that you see fit, and it's viable. It's not like other ARPGs where there's very specific equipment or very specific skills that you need to get in order to play and actually have fun. The only thing that I've heard people complain about this game, and I personally think it's kind of stupid that they do, is the fact that your default character is always Caucasian, with no way to adjust a skin shader. And to that, all I have to say is it's based in a fictional European setting mixed with a few Old West elements. So I wouldn't anticipate to see too many dark-skinned or Asian individuals running around in an area like that. However, they did add the DLC, The Forgotten Gods, which takes you into a more Middle Eastern African setting. So before people start screaming about lack of diversity and white savior or any of that nonsense, just bear in mind that this game has gone through development and updates for an extensive period of time. And that most of the time your character is going to be covered with armor anyways, so you can just kind of pretend that they look different than the default model if you have to.
Skill's not ready.
I think it's kind of funny that people get upset about things like that. Not sure if too many of you have played Suffering Ties That Bind and the original Suffering games. But one of the things that I did not like that Ties That Bind did is that in the original Suffering, the main character you played as was supposed to be racially ambiguous with not much of a background. That way you could kind of take the player and have them project themselves onto the character, since it did have a lot of moral options for quest lines and the such. And when they just basically flat out changed the story and made him like, oh no, he's just this big black dude from the hood, and then started trying to put in this backstory in the sequel where he was like affiliated with some gang members and yada yada yada, and that the evil force that was afflicting him was a split personality, it just ruined the story and decisions of the first game. And yes, I did forget the character's name. It's been a while since I've played The Suffering. The first game is great. Second game, not so much. I mean, the gameplay wasn't bad, but the story just kind of goat fucked everything. Did I just shoot that projectile mid-flight? Odd. Criminally overrated films. Everything that Quentin Tarantino did after Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction, with the exception of From Dusk Till Dawn, are incredibly overrated. As a matter of fact, I find everything except those three films and possibly Jackie Brown to be completely overrated shit. And the reason why I include Kill Bill on the overrated shit list is because the second Kill Bill film was just complete trash, which retroactively completely ruined the first film. Needless sequels. Pretty much every slasher film sequel, especially Hostel. The sequels to Hostel are just god-awful. Saw, the first couple of films were interesting, and then they had to go screw the storyline up. The third film wasn't horrible. I mean, it was supposed to wrap up the story. And then they just went on and on and on without end. I mean, it would have been a better idea to have made, wasn't the killer's name like Kramer or something like that? Forgot the character's name. But yeah, it would have made more sense for them to have explicitly turned the character into more of a vigilante, anti-hero, anti-villain, with making it explicitly clear after the first film that the people he's targeting are irredeemable assholes. Like, have them having had done things which no one would be willing to forgive. And when you find this out, like all of the suffering and gruesome shit they went through is more justified, where you don't really feel that bad for them. I know that in the plot they were supposed to have been doing things that were morally frowned upon, but they should have made them even bigger pieces of shit. Just straight up irredeemable. Hope I don't die. Hope I don't die. More overrated films. God, Avatar. Oh, holy shit, is that movie overrated? Titanic. So, pretty much anything that James Cameron did after Terminator 2.
That skill's not ready.
How would I do an acid trip nightmare fuel film? I would get David Lynch and Wes Anderson to collaborate with Clive Barker to do a horror comedy with a philosophical bent. It would be such a horrible train wreck that you could not look away. Hell, you could have Cronenberg help collaborate on it as well if you wanted to go ahead and really mess with people's heads. Overrated writers? Stephen King. The chick that wrote 50 Shades of Grey, I forgot her name. What's her name that did Twilight?
That skill's not ready.
Which Twilight wasn't poorly written, but it wasn't expertly written as well. Yes, I read them. The first book isn't horrible. Just when you start dragging the storyline about sparkly vampires out much longer than is necessary, then things start to go south. Worst vampires to deal with, Vampire the Masquerade vampires. Because that encompasses numerous different clans and species of vampire with different weaknesses, etc., etc. I would hate to have to deal with that scenario as a vampire hunter. Best vampire series. Okay, if you include books, the best vampire series ever written is Vampire Hunter D by Hideaki Kikuchi.
I can't carry anymore.
God, I can't talk tonight.
I can't do that yet.
Or Hideyuki Kikuchi. Yeah, Vampire Hunter D is basically what happens when you take the classic Hammer horror films, mix them with sci-fi fantasy,
I can't do that yet.
and then drop in a hint of samurai culture and cyberpunk,
I can't carry anymore. I can't.
and set it during Mad Max. When I tell you these books are a combination of every genre, I'm not kidding. They make things work in unison that should not work in unison and make it work well.
That skill's not ready.
Favorite pistol? Everyday carry, I'm actually a fan of the Glock 17. Simply for ammo capacity. But if you handed me a 2011 or a well-made 1911, I'm not going to turn it down. Or if all I had available was a 357 revolver, I wouldn't turn that down either. They're all great guns. It just boils down to personal preference and what your intended application is. For instance, I personally wouldn't trust anything with less than 15 rounds in a magazine while going down Martin Luther King Boulevard. I just wouldn't. You're asking to get killed at that point. Does barrel length matter? Not really. I mean, especially in self-defense, you're typically going to be so close to your target that your barrel length may actually be worse if it's a longer barrel. something greater than a 5-inch length. But again, it just boils down to personal preference, and at that point, size of the individual who is carrying the weapon. Like a 6-inch barrel revolver on a guy who's 6'7" is going to be the equivalent of a 4-inch barrel on a guy who's 5'10". Is there anything that I would not carry? Keltec. Certain models of Ruger. Anything from SIG. I would trust pulling my dick out and attempting to beat someone to death with it over using a SIG. Handing me a SIG would be like giving me the frying pan in PUBG Battleground. I mean, sure, I might be able to do something with it, but using it's going to be more dangerous to me than it is to whoever I'm trying to use it against. Favorite shotgun, the Mossberg 500 series. Remington isn't bad. The Rock Island shotguns are functional and relatively well priced.
That skill's not ready.
I wouldn't trust too much of the Turkish magazine fed shit that's on the market because I haven't had a chance to test any of it, and I'm highly skeptical of the quality. So I can't really give you any advice there, but I mean, if you're going for a shotgun, then just get a pump.
Skill's not ready.
Because from what I've personally experienced with the magazine-fed shotguns is that they're highly unreliable. Not because of the firearm itself, but because of the magazines. Best caliber of cartridge for hunting, my personal preference is 30 caliber, so as long as you're getting 30-30, 308, yada yada yada, you should be fine. Thoughts on 5.56 and 2.23 for hunting? I mean, if that's all you have and you're accurate with it, then yeah, it's, you know, the 2.23 was designed as a sportsman's round. The hate on 2.23 and 5.56 is mostly due to a shitload of misconceptions. And I do mean a shitload of misconceptions. It's actually a myth that the M16 was poor quality and that the magazines were poor quality. The truth of the situation in that matter is that the M16 had very, very shitty ammo being distributed for it. It was the ammo that was causing the firearm to have malfunctions. There was an entire investigation into this, and Eugene Stoner himself actually testified and gave advice and told them that the ammunition they were using was going to not function well in the M16. More firearm misconceptions that mil-spec means high quality. Mil-spec means that it's cheap. So whenever something says mil-spec on it, meaning military specifications, that is not something you should be proud of. Because the military bids on the cheapest shit they can get. Because chances are that the poor dumb bastard they're issuing it to is going to die if shit goes south. So they're not going to be spending a lot of money on high quality products to issue out to a bunch of cannon fodder. Best brand of AR-15. Pretty sure I mentioned this in a previous stream, but I'm actually a fan of PSA, Palmetto State Armory. Everything that I have purchased from them has been budget, reliable, durable, and accurate. Gun myths that need to be dispelled. I've got one for you. The myth of just as good as. Meaning that, yes, there really are firearms that are just as good as others at a quarter the cost. My Rock Island Armory 1911 that I carried for 4 years was just as good, and in some cases better, than 90% of the Kimbers and Wilson Combats that I would shoot and compete against occasionally. Not like professional competition, but like going to the range with a few guys and just seeing who could each outshoot one another. Swapping firearms out between us. I shot better consistently with the Rock Island than I did with the Kimber, the Wilson Combat, the Staccato, all of that crap. And it was half the cost of those other guns. And didn't have as many malfunctions. Are Glocks overrated? To an extent, yes. They were definitely overhyped when they first released. Like everybody got on the Glock fanboy wagon. Especially law enforcement. And the reason why that happened was simple. Ammo capacity. No one wants to reload 4 times in a gunfight. Yeah, Glock put a pistol on the market that had 17 rounds in the mag and 1 in the chamber for a total of 18 rounds. In a pistol that fully loaded weighed almost as much as a 1911 or a Beretta.
I can't do that yet.
That's what made them popular. Are there any companies that offer Glock clones that are just as good as Glock? Canic and Palmetto State Armory. The Palmetto State Armory dagger is every bit as good as a Glock 19. It's actually built on the frame for a Gen 3 Glock 19. And the Canics, the TP series, it's a funny name, but yeah, like the TP9 I think they're called. They're every bit as good as a Glock or a Ruger or a Smith & Wesson. Like the Smith & Wesson M&P Shield and stuff like that. And typically, if you're going to a gun store that offers fair prices, you'll be able to pick one of these things up for drastically cheaper than you can the competition. As a matter of fact, I'd be willing to say that since Canic is readily found at most gun stores, whereas Palmetto State Armory products are not, if you're not willing to order a Palmetto State Armory dagger, then go ahead and get you a Canic. But if you're just absolutely dead set on a Glock or an M&P or a Kel-Tec, I would advise against the Kel-Tec. But I mean, if that's what you want, that's what you want. So I'm not going to tell you how to spend your money. I advise against it. Yeah, there's any number of options available depending on what your budget is, hand size, what you intend to do with the pistol. I would not recommend subcompacts as a duty pistol. That's a really bad idea. If you're getting a duty pistol, get a full-sized pistol. Now, if you want to get a subcompact as a backup pistol in case you're disarmed or you run out of ammunition, then yeah, something like a small little 380 or a backup 9mm revolver, even a snub-nosed 357 in an ankle holster, great idea. But I would not pick that as a primary duty weapon. Best caliber for takedown power. We're kind of getting to some muddy waters on that one. 45, 357, 44, 10mm, all have great takedown power, but they all have their own little drawbacks and everything. So shot placement is what you need to focus on. A skilled marksman can kill someone just as easily with a .22 caliber pistol or rifle as they can with anything larger. Okay, here's another gun myth that tons of range training is necessary to stay in the groove, and that's absolutely not true. It just depends on the person. There are some people that do require the several hours of range training to become proficient with what they're going to be carrying. And I've seen other guys that are just basically instinctive natural shooters that they pick up a pistol, play around with it for a couple of minutes, get familiar with how it feels, and suddenly they're cutting the bullseye out of targets with it even though they've never shot it before. On the flip side, I've seen other guys that you could take them to the range every weekend for 6 months and they would barely be able to score a 60 on a range qualification. Either you've got it or you don't. Like, you can eventually train to the point that you do get it, And guys like that do exist, where you're going to have to take a lot of time and effort into becoming a proficient shooter. But are you willing to invest in that much ammo, and is someone going to be willing to take that much time getting you where you need to be? Alternatives to range shooting, home drills with a laser bore sight, snap caps, stuff like that. There's also little laser targeting systems that they offer for pistols now, where you set up your phone and it has a little target displayed on it, and then you fire a laser from your pistol. I think it's like called the Scorpion system or something like that. It's not really cheap, but I've seen guys that have used that who can then go to the range and just drill targets because they trained with that system.
I can't carry anymore.
But again, I need to emphasize that that's just going to depend on the individual. I only go to the range when it's absolutely necessary or if I'm needing to requalify, and I score 100 every single time. I've ever scored lower than 100 only when I've been piddling around with pistols that did not personally belong to me. And that was not during any type of official shooting event or requalification. Every time I've qualified or I've gone to a range in a official or professional capacity, I have scored 100. My range qualification target was, let me think here for a second, 15 rounds at 10 yards, 15 rounds at 15 yards, 10 rounds at 20 yards, 15 rounds at 20 yards, then another 15 at 15, then another 15 at 10. Shooting from different stances across those distances. And it was timed, and I did beat the times and still managed to score 100. Yeah, for my range qualification target, I did do a little extra shooting at the 15 and 20 yard ranges, just so that the instructor could see that I actually know what I'm doing. Are there any pointless guns on the market? SIG! It doesn't have the quality of a Beretta, and it doesn't have the durability of a Glock. And it has all the issues of everything that's came before it, with none of the advantages. Would I rather carry a cig or eat a bag of dicks? Well, if there's a cig and a bag of dicks in the same room, the cig fanboys might go ahead and eat the bag of dicks for me because they're used to gobbling cock up because, well, they're cig fanboys. Yes, if I were enlisted in the U.S. military, I would feel insulted if I were to be issued a SIG. I mean, the fact that the military went with SIG for anything lets me know that they don't give a shit about the safety of our soldiers or the reliability of their equipment. They're just going with whatever's cheapest or whoever sucked a general off during the signing of the contracts.
Can't do that yet.
AK or AR-15, it depends on what you want to do. Overall versatility, AR-15 is going to beat out AK every single time. However, takedown power, the 7.62 by 39 and the other cartridge variants actually do have a greater energy dump than the 223 or the 556. Accuracy is similar at standard engagement ranges. However, if you start getting past the 150 yard range mark, the 223 is going to shine a little bit compared to the 7.62 by 39 if the person firing the weapon is an average shooter. A decent marksman should shoot relatively the same with both rifles, with only some minor differences. I would say that the 223 would probably hold a slightly better group than the 7.62 by 39. However, that's just going on what I've experienced personally and what I've seen out of other people that I know. Am I talking out my ass or do I know what I'm talking about? Well, I've done armed security for over a year,
Can't do that yet.
and I've been raised around firearms my entire life, and a lot of guys that I know in a professional and personal capacity are ex-military and law enforcement, and I've trained with a lot of these guys, so unless you're willing to say that all the guys that I've been exposed to and what they've taught me are bullshit and are full of shit, then I would say that I'm not an expert, but I do have a bit of an idea of what I'm talking about. Yes, I'm giving my personal opinions on things. That's the reason why I'm saying if you find something you like and you're good with it, then go with that. Don't pick a firearm just because somebody told you to, unless it's a SIG. In which case, slap the motherfucker for trying to get you unintentionally killed, ignore their advice, and consider a Kel-Tec before you would a SIG. Yes, I have seen a SIG negligently discharge at the range in person. Not on one occasion, but 3 occasions at 3 different ranges.
That skill's not ready.
The first time it scared the shit out of me. Because I didn't know if someone was just trying to fire on the crowd, so here we are ducking and covering and everybody's trying to figure out if we should return fire. No, gun just went off while in the holster.
Can't do that yet.
The second time it happened, it still scared the shit out of me. And it actually went off while the guy had it set up on the table at the range. And thank God our range instructor managed to grab the pistol and unload it and check the chamber.
My inventory is full.
Because it seems like these damn things just have a mind of their own. Like the saying, guns don't kill people, people do, should really be updated to, guns don't kill people, SIG does. Yes, I am absolutely convinced that some cocksucking definitely took place for that military contract to have gone through. Because I don't know of any patriotic military personnel who would ever, in their right mind, feel comfortable arming the troops with a piece of shit as unreliable and dangerous to the user as a SIG. Same goes for law enforcement. If there was some type of contract signed about exclusively using SIG, then whoever made that contract at the local or county or state level was definitely getting their crank yanked and slobbed on by some bitch at SIG. That's not my opinion either. At this point, it has to be recognized as fact. Do I think cocksucking went on when Glock became popular? No, I think that all of that was basically hype stupidity and FOMO, fear of missing out, where there were so many high-profile guys that were trumping up the Glock that other law enforcement agencies were like, oh, I don't want to be made fun of because I still carry a 1911 or a Smith & Wesson Model 1038 Special revolver. I want to be part of the winning group. It's kind of like Alabama football. Glock is the Alabama football of the gun world. Everybody hates them, but deep down, almost everybody wants to be them. Not because it's a superior product, but because it's a popular product. Which, yes, in some ways it is superior. I will admit. But again, there's the hype factor. The overwhelming hype factor. You know, there very well might be a direct correlation between the number of homosexuals in the military and when SIG got their contract. That might be a conspiracy theory worth looking into.
Can't do that yet.
Would I be concerned if someone pulled a .22 caliber pistol on me? Yes. Getting shot hurts. I don't care what caliber it is. It's gonna hurt and can possibly kill me. I'm not gonna be like some of these baby boomer dipshits. They're like, it's just a .22. I'd shrug that right off. Alright, Homer. You take a round point blank to your chest and tell me how your cardiovascular system's doing afterwards. It's like some of these dipshits are like, the 9mm ain't got no takedown power at all. You can shrug that shit right off. I don't know about you, I see a motherfucker can shrug off a 9mm hollow point at point blank range, and I'm gonna be asking you if he's from fucking Krypton. Cause that bastard ain't human. Now, I don't mean just survive it. I mean like you shoot the son of a bitch and he just shrugs it off and laughs at you. Because that seems to be what a lot of these freaking boomers think when they hear 9mm. That's a girl's round. Now, I'll be honest, there's a high likelihood that if you use the metric system for measuring the things such as temperature, length, width, and height, that you're probably gay. or at the very least you've entertained some homosexual thoughts. But 9mm not a horrible round. It's like I always say, there's two types of men. Men that use feet, inches, and Fahrenheit and yards, and possible homosexuals. And the only thing that should be ever measured in the metric system, and I do mean the only thing, is ammunition.
I can't carry anymore.
Yeah, I have a conspiracy theory that the reason why the Brits used the metric system, and so do the French, is because when they measure their tiny little penis, that when you use the metric system, it makes it seem like it's bigger. Because for people that aren't very spatially aware, 7 centimeters sounds a lot more imposing than 2 inches. What do I think of people that ride loud motorcycles and huge trucks? Not much. And as to me, I don't really think much of them as a human being because, I mean, if you've got to go around and advertise to everybody that you have a small penis, can't satisfy your wife, let alone any woman, and that you possibly like to have things inserted into your anus, then by all means do so. But please don't do the shit around me. Yes, people that drive around in that are either trying to overcompensate for a small penis, or they're having daddy issues or mommy issues from not being given enough attention as a child. So they're desperately trying to gain attention from people by being as loud and as obnoxious as possible, without having the intellectual forethought to realize that all they're doing is pissing people off and making themselves seem like a giant douchebag homo.
I can't carry anymore. I can't carry anymore.
Alright, I'm gonna get rid of this guy here and call it a night. Bullet sponge.
I can't carry anymore.
Alright.
My inventory is full. I can't carry anymore.
Alright, what about the mall? go. Okay, that's it.